Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Town of Los Gatos Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, November 12th. And Mr. Paulson, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Sayoc?
Here.
Commissioner Badami?
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Talasfor?
Here.
Chair Smith?
Here.
And Commissioner Erickson and Birch are absent.
All right, and then I'd like to ask everyone to stand and join Commissioner Sayoc in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And before I begin, I'd like to give a special acknowledgement to Commissioner Sayoc, who prevailed in the recent council election, and so she will be leaving us. So that's why I wanted you to give the Pledge of Allegiance, Commissioner Sayoc. You're welcome. Normally, I call for an approval of the minutes, and I understand we have a speaker who would like to address the minutes. If I could call to the podium Ms. Quintana. And as you know, Ms. Quintana, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Lee Quintana. I'd like some clarification of the last item on the minutes of the October 22nd meeting. I know that the minutes are action minutes. However, when reading the minutes, the action is that the Planning Commission gave directions to the applicant with no elaboration of what those directions were. I think that the minutes don't serve their purpose as a, they don't serve their purpose in informing the public as to what the action actually was. And therefore, I'd like them clarified to summarize the directions that the Planning Commission gave to the applicant. Although there was no actual motion made, there were directions given.
Thank you, Ms. Quintana. Ms. Prevetti, I'm looking at the last item on the minutes, and the last item that I see was Aztec Ridge. And so I believe that we did have a motion.
I'm sorry, I'm referring to the Woodland Avenue. And I didn't bring the agenda number. I thought it was number 3? 5.
It was number 5, and it was taken out of order, so it's actually the first new other business item in the minutes.
Got it. Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, Ms. Quintana. And with that, Commissioners, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Commissioner Sayoc?
May I ask a question,
Yes,
and
sure.
then I'll make a motion? I do think because there was direction given to the applicant, and he did acknowledge, he nodded, but it would be helpful if it were in writing so that we would be able to actually verify the direction that we provided to the applicant, and if there were further questions, it would be on record. So may we make that adjustment?
Actually, as you recall, there was quite a bit of back and forth as different speakers came before you and presented their concerns. Many of the commissioners had comments or additional questions. And then when Mr. McCurdy came up at the end, he did comment that he was willing to entertain any suggestions of creative ways to make the project more appealing to the community. And that is noted in your minutes, as well as the specific comments about the concerns of the 2-story home, et cetera. There was, again, quite a bit of back and forth between individual commissioners and Mr. McCurdy, and typically that kind of back and forth dialogue would be a little bit more than action minutes. So each commissioner really had kind of their own perspective, but I think Mr. McCurdy, representing the applicant, summarized it pretty well himself by saying that they would be entertaining suggestions of creative ways, and given that the main issues were the second story, the bulk, et cetera, from staff's perspective, the minutes capture the what they're going to be working on. And we have not yet heard back from the applicant, so I assume he's going to be reviewing it all very carefully and hopefully coming back with some revised plans for your consideration.
I would also comment that the meeting, however, is captured on tape. And so if anyone wanted to go back and look at verbatim discussion, that's available for viewing, correct?
Absolutely.
Well, the other thing,
Commissioner O'Donnell, yes, thank you.
The other thing, maybe, I mean, when you try to parse this out, I think what I'm hearing is we had multiple opinions. Perhaps the language we use here suggests there was a direct direction, and perhaps that's the misleading thing. So if we said the commissioners made individual comments and asked the applicant to consider those comments, it would be clearer, and I don't think we should try to then put in each comment that was received. This sort of suggests there was a direction, and that's not the case, I think.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Commissioner Talisford, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if it could possibly have just summarized what in the staff report we were to comment on, you know, it was scale, mass, blah, you know, if it was just something general like that, then it would, if somebody wanted to look at the tape, you know, because of, oh, I want to see why the mass was a problem, that, you know, they'd have reason because it would be listed. Mm-hmm. So I could agree with that.
All right, so Commissioner O'Donnell, are you suggesting an amendment to the minutes?
Yes, I would make a motion that we amend the minutes as they are now constituted to change the last line of paragraph 5, which presently says, commission members discussed the matter and provided direction to the applicant. We could simply say, commission members discussed the matter and gave individual opinions and asked the applicant to consider those opinions.
All right, or provided their views or
Yes,
opinion.
I'm not worried about the words. Views would be better than opinions, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Do I have a second to that motion to amend the minutes? Commissioner Talisford?
I would also agree with that.
And so what we are voting on is the motion to amend the minutes so that the last line says that the commission members discussed the matter and provided their views to the applicant. And
I think it's their individual views.
Well, if we just say views, because we want the count, I'm not sure each one of us did.
Okay.
So if we said gave our views and asked the applicant to consider them, because it wasn't just gave them our views, we asked them to go back and consider those.
thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. All right, so given the motion and the second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Ms. Pravetti or Mr. Paulson, are there any written communications this evening?
There is one desk item for item number 6, which is on the dais.
Yes, have the commissioners had an opportunity to read that? All right, thank you. And then are there any continuances for this evening?
There is one requested continuance, which is item 6. That item will be going to the Housing Element Advisory Board due to the need to address some more significant comments from housing and the State Housing and Community Development regarding the town's housing element than originally anticipated. So we're requesting that that item be continued to December 16th. Oh, sorry, 10th, yes.
Mr. Schultz, you wanted to add something?
And I would also say in regards to continuances, although it's not a requested continuance, just in case there's someone who was waiting for that, for number 5 will need to be continued because of the absences and the conflict of interest. We won't have a quorum for that item. So when that item comes up, there would be a motion that would need to be continued. But I'm just, for the public, it's not a request from the applicant, but if anybody was waiting for that item, it'll have to be continued also.
So that's item number 5. Shall we entertain that motion now, or we want to take it in order? Yes, let's do it now and get, that's just a piece of business to get out of the way. All right, Commissioner Talisfor?
Right. I will move that we, would it be both items? 6, just 5, okay. That we continue agenda item 106 East Main Street, conditional use permit application U-13-017. We're requesting approval to operate a Museums of Los Gatos on property zone Z-1 PD APN 529-34-108. Property owner, Town of Los Gatos. Applicant, Museums of Los Gatos.
I'll second that.
Oh, to December 10th.
No, that's 6. Oh, you're.
To
yes.
December 10th.
6
It's
is
continued to
Yeah.
Okay,
December
they're both
10th.
Okay.
Yes.
And then number 6, though, is to November 9th.
No, it's the 6th, it's the 10th.
December 10th is.
I would suggest we make a motion for both
Both of them.
items.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I
that's
didn't know
what
they
I-
were on both the same
Yeah,
nights.
that's what I, okay. And also for the housing element, general plan amendment, GP-14-002, a public hearing to review and provide a recommendation to the town council regarding the 2015-2023 housing element update and addendum to the 2020 general plan final environmental impact report, due to the fact that there
I don't know that we have
we
to
don't
give
need
that.
to?
Yes,
Okay,
that
just
big
we'll
of-
continue
We're
both
just going to
items to
continue it,
December
right.
10th.
All right.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. We have a motion, we have a second, we have a vote. All in favor? Aye. All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you. And so now we will begin. So the Town of Los Gatos strongly encourages participation from the public. We do consider it vital to the continuation of our great democracy. In that respect, people have an opportunity 3 different ways to address the Planning Commission. The first way is through verbal communications. You saw an opportunity this evening. Ms. Quintana did step forward and make a verbal communication on an item that was not an agendized item for this evening. The second way is that you can appear before the commission. You fill out a card that's in the in front of each one of the benches, and you may speak on an agenda item. The third way is that you can submit comments in writing and submit them prior to our meetings to the staff office. They are put into a packet, and I can assure you that the commissioners do review all information prior to our meetings. So with that, we have do we have any subcommittee reports from our last meeting? I don't believe so. All right, and I do not have any further cards for any verbal communication. So we are going to move right on to our no, I'm sorry, we do have a continued public hearing, and that is, I'm sorry, I just,
Number 1.
yes, it is number 1. There we go. 16347 Aztec Ridge, requesting approval to demolish an existing single-family residence and construct a new single-family residence. 16347 Aztec Ridge. It's architecture and site application S14050. And Ms. Savage, I understand you will give us the staff report this evening.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. The project was previously reviewed on October 22nd. with a height exception request. The Planning Commission directed the applicant to return to this evening with evidence and rationale pursuant to the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines for that height exception. Their evidence and rationale is included in your staff report for this evening. There is also a roof sample for the metal roof material that they are proposing. This concludes staff presentation.
And you have the sample with you, or the applicant's going to provide it?
I have it with me, and I will begin to pass it around to the commissioners.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, who is going to speak on behalf of the applicant this evening? Thank you. So, Mr. Sloan, for the benefit of the audience, before your time begins, let me explain that the applicant has 5 minutes to address the commission this evening. When the yellow light blinks, that means he's down to 30 seconds. Anyone who wishes to speak on the topic, in addition to the applicant, will have 3 minutes to speak to us. Again, the yellow light will form. When you step up to the podium, please pull the microphone towards you, identify yourself, and then we're going to hit the button and the time will start. So welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tom Sloan, and I'm the project's architect. I just want to thank you for continuing this project, allowing it to come back to you, and that way we can present you with the justifications needed to make the findings and approve the project tonight. I just want to say, for me, the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines are a familiar document, as I was part of a small group of architects that over the course of several meetings participated with the town as volunteers to review and amend the documents before they were even submitted to the Planning Commissioners and the Architectural Standards Hillside Committee about 10 or 12 years ago. Each of us architects simply wanted to have these, this document to be not a design by numbers document, but something where that you know, we can use as a something that, you know, recognize the differences in the that the hillside provides. You know, in the flatlands, all the lots are somewhat characteristic rectangular lots, but in the hillsides, you know, your neighbor may not even have the same characteristics as yourself. So we wanted to recognize this so that we would have creative license to meet the goals and objectives of the documents and of the town. So as architects, it is very frustrating to have this one-size-fits-all when in fact, you know, there's all these, well, let me just move on. After reviewing the tape from last month's hearing, it was clear that half of you commissioners were kind of hung up on the height not being below 18 feet high. And in fact, the portion of the project that was over 18 feet high was not even visible at all, with exception of a small portion of roof overhang. And that portion is actually perceived as being lower than the 18-foot portion of the building that's projected towards the valley floor. The Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines, in fact, state that they want to encourage design excellence, and I would like to propose that design excellence is achieved in this project by making the taller portion of the structure just simply go away. It states in the guidelines that we shall protect the view of the hillside from visual impacts, and I think we just did that. And wherever possible, within the ridgeline area, we shall construct a building so as not to project above the physical ridgeline as viewed from the viewing platforms down below. And that, I believe, we have achieved, because the portion, again, that we're talking about is simply not seen at all. The visual impact of the building as seen from the viewing platform may be mitigated to the greatest extent reasonable by moving the structure to another location on the site. And that's what we did. We took the highest part of the structure and moved it away from the viewing platform and sort of hid it behind other roofs. And thus this small 262 square foot addition, it really just becomes, again, invisible. So I believe the justification that you commissioners requested to approve the project is in fact out of view of any viewing platforms in the town. The project clearly meets the objectives of protecting view sheds, maintaining the rural wooded character of the hillside, and is certainly in harmony with its natural settings. It also conforms with the landforms and other features of natural landscape and protects and preserves the view sheds. So these are the stated goals, in the guidelines, and I certainly hope that I've given you enough justification to approve the project such that my clients can move forward to annex their property from the county and into the town of Los Gatos. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan. Now, don't go away, okay? One thing I'm wondering if Ms. Savage could do is, could you, Ms. Savage, we had the blow-up again attached to our items, and I'd like to just have that up on the screen. I think it would help with perhaps any questions that we may have. You have it, thank you. We can turn it on.
I think this is what I do have the before and after with me here, if that's what you mean.
Well, I just like to, I just have a feeling we're going to have some questions, and if it's up there, then members of the audience can see it as well.
Great.
Is it not on? There you go. You almost had it. There you go. And is that as large as you can make it? There we go. All right, Commissioner O'Donnell, I believe you had the first question.
Yes, I just want to know if you read the staff's remarks on tonight's reports to us. Have you seen the report? Have you seen the report that the staff prepared for this evening?
I must confess, I received this in the mail yesterday, and I saw it come in as an envelope, and it hasn't even been opened yet. I'm very busy these days and was out of the office all day.
What the staff says, so you'll be aware of it, is the proposed structure would be more visible than the existing structure even when the proposed first floor is 18 feet and less in height. The applicant's letter also explains that the 262 square foot second story cannot be located within the least restrictive development area without a second story. However, the plans, sheet A3 of Exhibit 12, show that there are other locations to locate 262 feet on the first floor, such as adjacent to the proposed bath, 3, laundry, and family room. It's going to be difficult for us to deal with your position if you're unable to respond to the staff saying you're wrong.
Okay, so let me switch to a different document here. So,
do you have a copy of the report? You didn't open the envelope, but I think it's outside when you walk in.
Yeah.
Ms. Savage is going to give you a copy of what we're referring to.
I think what we're talking about is right in this area, right here, is where we've located the second story. And I think what we're talking about is trying to put this addition of equal volume right in this location right here. Well, putting it here makes the house unusually thick, and then it blocks the views from these other rooms. And so the other rooms that were located here now would have to be located, pushed out I have setbacks along this edge.
Let me interrupt. My question is, how would you respond to the staff's report? You have not read the staff's report. We've just given you a copy. I've heard what you said before. What I need to know is, what is your response to the staff saying you're wrong? And I don't want to hear theory. I'd like you to deal with what they said.
All right. Well, let me read this and okay.
So what I'm going to suggest, Mr. Sloan, on behalf of the applicant, you have an opportunity to come back up to us for 3 minutes anyways. We have 2 other speakers that I think we can move forward and hear, and then that will give you an opportunity to review that information.
Thank you. That's
Right.
good. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Okay. And maybe we can take your drawing off, and I believe the homeowner is going to come up anyway, so let's put that other drawing back up, Ms. Savage, if you don't mind. So let me call Kate Raft. Thanks. Lord.
Is it okay if I put it back on the...
Sure. So you're going to put it back up, okay. All right, that's fine.
Because my name is Catherine Raft.
Now, pull the microphone close to your mouth or take it out, either way, whatever's comfortable for you.
Lift it up. Kate Raft. I am speaking on behalf of my husband and I, the homeowners. Actually, Commissioner O'Donnell, I have rationale for you. Because I know that Jennifer had expressed some concern and had suggested moving my husband's office to that space. So I'm here just as a mom. So I have we have 3 children under the age of 6, and our site is really unique because there's flat space where the home is built, and then off the back side you can see my pool, the 70s kidney style pool, is probably 8 or more feet below the home. And so I kind of call that the courtyard, but that essentially is a space that I need for my children to have some outdoor space that's near to the home. I'm inside the home to require them to go downstairs, to go play by a swimming pool. To me, just isn't logical as a mom. There's limited flat space around the home, so I want to preserve some of that so my 3 kids, 6, 3, and 6 months, can have some flat space. And I don't know how much time you guys have been up on the hill, but we have coyotes, we have rattlesnakes, and just last month we had a mountain lion. So I take it very seriously to have a protected area for my 3 children. So that is one flat space, and this is my family room. We spend a lot of time here, and there's a door here. This is the kids' playroom. So we had designed the home thinking that this is really our livable space, and we really utilize that area. Otherwise, we have to go down steep stairs down to an area where I actually can't quite see them from the kitchen or the room. And the other thing, just from, I'm not an architect, but just from a logical standpoint, we all agree that for the most part that my husband's office isn't visible from the viewing platform. So it wouldn't make sense to me to build on the backside of the house, making this portion of the house even more visible to the valley floor with windows and whatever would be there. So that, I would say, is our rationale, my rationale as a mother. And then essentially, my husband does do work on East Coast time, and I need a space for him that he can do conference calling early in the morning away from the kids' bedrooms. So that's all I have to say.
So Ms. Raff, don't go away, okay,
Okay.
because we're going to ask you some questions. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Have you had the opportunity to read the staff report?
No, I just got a call from Tom that Jennifer had called him regarding this concern. So that's
The staff report came out last Friday,
okay.
and nobody's looked at it, I guess.
Well, no, I don't. The documents go to my architect.
Okay,
I
thank you very
apologize.
Commissioner Bandami.
Is your outdoor pool a functioning swimming pool?
It sure is. We do have a fence around it, though.
Okay, so it's filled with water and...
Yes, it is.
Okay, so, right, thank you.
So I'm just going to draw your attention to one line in the staff report, and I understand that you've spoken to Ms. Savage, so you had an indication of what staff was suggesting. Adjacent to the proposed bath 3 and laundry and family room, and I understand very clearly about the family room and the children's playroom, but can you just identify for me where bath 3 and laundry would be?
So it goes playroom, laundry room, girls' bathroom. And there's a door here because when we use a swimming pool, I don't want kids traipsing through my house with wet feet. So we use a door here to go in and out of the restroom because we're not building a pool house. So it's kind of, rather than build out more structure on the hillside, we just decided to use our house as the pool house.
I understand. All right. Any other questions for Ms. Rapp? Seeing none. Thank you very much. You can have a seat. We're not ready to call back Mr. Sloan yet. We're going to talk to Mr. Is it Maggette?
Good evening. I'm Dave Maggette. I'd like to start by reminding the Commission that this is the property that our client was born and raised in, and now he's proposing a very modest addition for his family. All along he's requested that we try and maintain the surrounding areas, the topography, as much as possible. In doing so, we feel he has gone above and beyond in all aspects of this project to comply with the town and the hillside regulations. They have added 400 square feet to the footprint of the house, and the major portion of that was our recommendation due to the failing of the existing foundation under the master area. They have stayed well within the requested LRV on all building materials, including the roof, stucco windows, eave color, etc. As stated earlier, the client wanted to maintain the natural topography, and if you refer to the site plan, it's not a very flat lot. So rather than ask for grading, retaining walls, fill, we felt it much more suitable to ask for the height exemption, knowing it could be placed on the south elevation, eliminated from the viewing platform. Also, I think it's worth noting that our client was approved with the county. So they've moved out of their house in April. The day they went down to pay for their permit, literally the day they went down to pay for their permit, they were told they were being annexed. So they've been in a rental property since April. They've had their house on Aztec Ridge broken into one time that we know of. They've had a baby since this is going on. And in the beginning, when they got annexed or thought I explained to them that it's probably a good thing. You know, I live in Los Gatos. I have a business in Los Gatos. It's a good town, you know. The police protection from the county up there is not very good. But they heard the horror stories of exactly what they're going through tonight and have been going through, that it's very difficult to reason with the town council, the planning commission on some of these hillside regulations. So obviously they're starting to question my judgment. I think I do a lot of homes in the hillside up here, and this is, honestly, I thought this was a slam dunk, to be honest with you. I've done several homes in the hillside that are much more obtrusive. You know, again, this addition is not visible from the valley floor, and the recommendation to put it in the one patio of the house is, I mean, this is a remodel. They're not changing the footprint or the foundation. So to put an office in the patio, I know you're getting impatient, Commissioner O'Donnell, but it's not even feasible.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Maggette? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Did you read this?
I did.
When did you read it?
This evening.
While you're sitting there?
While I was sitting there.
Would you like to respond to it?
There's nothing to respond to. It's not feasible what you're asking.
If you can't respond to it, fine.
What would you like me to respond to?
It says the proposed structure is more visible, and you're saying that's false?
Yes, it is false.
And then it says there are other places you could put the second story, and you're saying that's false.
Yes, if you don't want to see it, yes, that's false.
Okay. I'll talk to staff when we close. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
All right, we do have an opportunity for, oh, no, there is one more speaker. Ms. Quintana? Lee Quintana? You're not speaking. All right, thank you. Okay, Mr. Sloan.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for not opening my mail promptly and all that, but anyway, it's quite simple. I've read and understand the comments. So my response to the fact that this new addition is more visible is simply the fact that we're raising the plate line. So if we are in the same footprint, we're raising the building up. That's probably, the obvious thing. So what did we do? We mitigated by putting in changing the color from white to this very dark, muted greenish brown. It has a LRV of 17, I believe it is. It's amazingly low number, okay? The roof, which we have a sample for you, is even darker. So because the roof material doesn't, we can't pull a light reflectivity value from it, but it is darker than the stucco. So let's just say it's 15. So I can see why she says it's more visible because we raised the plate line. However, we mitigated by changing the color. And I think if you're in the valley floor looking up, you can easily see a white building. But the fact that this is camouflaged virtually with the trees and the surrounding shrub, it disappears. Now, could we have located the second story on down below in different locations? Yes, perhaps we could, and then it would be actually visible and instead of invisible. So this structure, I located it using creativity, out of the box thinking, let's just completely hide it. Okay, so that's what we did. It's not the second story, the contentious element of this project is not visible. The rest of the project is 18 feet high. That's all I can say.
So, Mr. Sloan, don't go away. And I'm going to ask Ms. Savage to put the color picture back up again. Because now I'm just going to walk you through, if I can, what we're looking at so that we are all clear. We see the white buildings in front, and that's a different home, that's a different residence. And then behind it is the subject property. I see a small chimney as the highest point, or maybe it's meeting the peak of the roof. Maybe I... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a roof overhang that's sticking out.
All right, so that is not the second story, that's correct?
No, that is the second story. That it's not the wall of the second story, but it's the roof overhang.
It's the roof overhang. So that is viewable from this viewing platform because the structure as we're looking at it is viewable. But what you're saying is, what we're seeing is a very dark colored blend into the hillside. So we're not actually, so even though we can see a structure, we aren't, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we find that it's blending in, is what you're saying, by the choice of the colors.
Yes, that's correct. And I also wanted to, again, state that that portion that is actually higher than 18 feet appears lower than the building portion of the building that's meets that 18-footer.
Because the portion that's higher is actually at the front of the street.
That's
And it's
right.
not at the back of the house viewable from the hillside platform, the viewing shed.
Yeah, we
Correct?
always get you're like me. I always see this as being the front, so we'll call this the front, which is the
Well,
from the
I
view
like to
from
say
the viewing
street side. This is not the street
side. That's
side.
right.
But the higher portion is on the street side where the driveway into the house is.
Correct.
Correct, yes. All right, so that's why you're saying it is not viewable from the platform.
Correct.
All right, and that explains then why Mr. Sloan is disagreeing with Ms. Savage. So now, Commissioner O'Donnell.
I understand you to say that although it's higher, you've camouflaged the height so it's less visible. However, if the existing structure's paint were carried on to the higher structure, it would be more visible, right?
Correct. And what you're seeing here, with exception of the roof overhang that sort of sticks a little very minute portion, way less than 25% of the building, is the contentious element. If we were to remove that second story, then we would have an 18-foot high building, right? And it wouldn't change anything that you're looking at right now. This is also, remember, I took a...
Wait a minute, why do you mean it wouldn't change anything? It would remove the second story, right? Which I'm
Yeah,
looking
which you
at.
can't even see here.
Well, see that, I can see it.
This element right in here,
Yeah.
that is the family room on the lower floor.
Okay,
That's the
so
first floor.
We
That's-
have two drawings here, or two photographs. I thought one was the existing condition. Is the other a proposal or not?
I do have an existing, and this is the proposed.
Okay, well, does the proposal then show the proposal? Is this the proposal?
Yes.
And I can see some added height?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but you're saying it's not so bad because it's camouflaged, right?
Well, the added height is below 18 feet. It's still below 18 feet.
So when the staff says it's more than 18 feet, they're just flat wrong, right?
No, the portion of the building that is over 18 feet is invisible. It's hidden behind the building. You see, as you recede back, I'll use my hands. If I'm looking up, at my hands might be at the same height, but as the hand behind here appears lower, and that's the effect of that we're doing.
Well, if you look at your present photograph of the house as it presently exists, there is no, the roof structure as shown here is not on it, right? In other words, the first photograph is existing structure.
Let me put that up right now.
Fine, I'm looking at it right now.
Okay.
So you didn't look at the staff report, but it's attached to the staff report.
Well, no, that is what's up,
No,
isn't
there are
it?
two pictures,
Oh,
one
yes,
on
right,
either
right,
side.
right, yeah, right. Mine only has one side, but that's okay. So put the, Ms. Savage, can you just put them up so that Mr. Sloan sees what Mr. O'Donnell specifically is talking about?
Okay, that's as it exists now, is that right?
That is
yeah.
correct.
Now put the other one on, please.
Can I do it?
Either one can do it. It would certainly appear that you see more of that structure than you saw the prior structure.
And I agree.
Now, let me finish. I'm only relying on my eyesight. But as I understood your argument was, yeah, but it's a darker color. Is that your argument?
Okay. Okay, so let me just maybe start a little bit from the beginning. The existing structure, what we're doing is we're essentially keeping the same footprint. I'm going to go, right here is the family room that projects forward or towards the viewing platform. That footprint didn't change. The height was raised up on that, still meeting the 18-foot height requirement.
if you contrast that photograph, or that touched-up photograph, with the prior one, I don't see how you can say it hasn't changed. I'm looking at it.
No, no, no. I'm not saying, her argument that it is more visible is because we took the footprint and we raised it up 2 feet.
And that's more visible.
That becomes more visible. I completely agree with that statement.
Okay.
However, there's something that we're forgetting about here, which is the highest part of the contentious element of the project, the second story, is not visible, period, except that roof overhang, that little dash.
I'm really confused. Are you saying you've raised a portion of the building which blocks our view of the addition? I don't quite understand, because when I contrast both of these photographs, in the first photograph, which is existing condition, I don't see the peak structure. And then the second photograph, which is to be built, you can see the peaked structure. And then you're saying, well, that's not what I'm really talking about. So I'm confused by that.
Okay, well, there's the peak right there. See it?
Yeah,
it's in white.
Now go to the next picture, which is the proposal.
And it is taller.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
But
it's more visible.
It's more visible. However, it's less than 18 feet high.
How high was it before you proposed to add on to it?
Well, raising it 2 feet, it would probably 15 feet high.
So today it's probably 15 feet high.
Yes.
And it will probably be 18 feet if you get this approved?
Yeah, yes. We'll use round numbers because
And this has nothing to do with the second story?
That's right.
Okay, and the second story is behind the 18-foot, and it's higher than 18 feet?
Yes.
How high is it?
24 foot, almost just under 25.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Sloan? Seeing none, I'm sorry, Commissioner, don't go away.
Okay.
Commissioner
Yes.
Talisford.
So, in the staff report, the staff says the plans show that there are other locations to locate the 262 square feet, such as adjacent to the proposed bath 3. And we heard from the owner of the house that she needs to have this bathroom here so that when people come in off the pool, they can use that instead of having a pool house, et cetera. So my question to you is, I'm wondering, is there any issue, plumbing-wise or plan-wise, that you couldn't switch the laundry room with the bathroom 3 so that you could possibly enclose that area that staff has suggested without hindering using bathroom 3 for the pool, and actually for the playroom, it would be closer for the girls to go into the bathroom? I'm referring
Well,
to
then what you have are you
A3.
have rooms that have no light and ventilation because they're being blocked, because you're putting the office in front of them, which then puts, we could exchange them, but then where do we? I don't want to get into all the difficulty here, but I think what you're saying is locate the office in front of, thus, in doing so, it would make those rooms interior with no light and ventilation.
I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying that this is where the staff had suggested it. And one of the reasons that the owner didn't want that to happen is that they use bath 3. But I was just thinking if there was some way to be creative about designing this area to accomplish having the 262 square feet within the house and not in the roof. Because actually, on this drawing, I mean, on your photograph here of the proposed house, I can see the second story of the office. And it's that eave that comes out at 24 feet.
He says no.
Yeah, the eave is probably at maybe 20 feet.
Well, you told
but-
us it was 24.
Well, that's the peak of the roof that's hidden. You see, the eave
Okay,
is
so-
lower than that.
So then what I'm seeing is at 20 feet. But nonetheless, I'm seeing much more visible mass than was there before. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I said,
Thank you,
yes.
okay.
I think we're stuck on design by numbers
No.
again,
Well,
okay?
Mr. Sloan,
So let me
Commissioner
really make this,
Telesfor.
let me make this very clear.
Mr. Sloan, hold
I
on
think
just
I'm-
one moment,
I
okay?
think you answered my question. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank
Okay, now, don't go away, because what we want, I just want to leave this very clear. The entire structure is being raised 2 feet, which is why it would be more visible.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. But the structure that you're asking for or the portion that you're asking for the exception to is in what I call the front or the driveway part of the house, and it's not visible in your mind except for that small portion of the roof. I just want to get all this summarized before I close this public portion of the public hearing. Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm correct so far?
Yes.
Is that correct? All right. So we're using photographs. As I recall, the homeowner last time told us that these were zoomed at 40 times.
500 times.
500 times. Okay, because I remember that I was on Blossom Hill trying to look up, and I could not identify this structure. But I couldn't identify it in its current form, but as soon as you zoom in 500 times, you do see that. So, all right. So, any other questions for Mr. Sloan before he sits down? All right, Mr. Sloan, thank you. Now, I'm going to close the public portion of the public hearing, and I am going to ask for commissioners' comments, motions. Yes, Commissioner O'Donnell.
I just want to ask staff, because I think you correctly summarized what it is. If we assume that the building, whoever in staff would be most responsive to this, if the building is raised 2 feet, as we've seen, the building becomes more visible, but the building is still only 18 feet high. The addition, which is the second story, is not visible because it's behind, and I think if the rendering here is correct, you can't see the second story. So all that you can see, and staff comments that the building is more visible, well, that's true, but if the building that we see is only 18 feet, what does the law provide? Do we have a right to say they can't be 18 feet? I'm confused because staff is saying it's more visible. And if I understand where we are at the moment, it's only more visible because they raised the whole house by 2 feet. The subject matter of the second story is not visible because it's behind that. Looking at the drawing, I think that seems correct. So it's very confusing. Staff says somehow it's more visible, but it isn't the second story that's more visible. And secondly, then you say, even though perhaps the second story isn't visible, it could be put some other place. So that loses me. If it's not visible, why do we want to put it some other place?
Thank you for your questions. I do understand your confusion. So just to summarize, the maximum height for houses that are visible, especially in this location where they're at a significant ridgeline and would be constructed above that significant ridgeline identified in the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines, the maximum height is 18 feet. The applicant is requesting a height exception not for that portion as you recognize that is visible from the viewing platform, but rather a portion that they've identified and provided compelling rationale that is not visible from the valley floor. So your thought process is certainly reasonable, and the Planning Commission can go along with your thought process in supporting the project.
Well, am I misreading the staff's report then when you say however, which usually means as opposed to, and you say however, the structure would be more visible, even though it's only 18 feet, and you could put it someplace else. I took that as staff saying you didn't like what he was proposing. So am I wrong on that?
Thank you. I'd like to clarify that staff's analysis of the letter was analyzing the evidence and rationale that the applicant provided for the height exception. Certainly the additional information that they provided verbally tonight, that you can't see the second story, helps provide rationale, but the argument in the letter saying that it can't be placed elsewhere, staff did feel the need to correct that in the record, that it could be placed elsewhere.
Right, Commissioner O'Donnell, you all set?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Sayak.
Okay, thank you. When it was last heard, I think I had brought up the LRDA, and I think I might have contributed to this confusion. When we last heard it I think it was 2 weeks ago, I felt comfortable in approving the second story because when I was looking at the plans, I felt that given the LRDA, there were no options to place the 262 square feet. And so the staff report then came back and in my mind provided an alternative and said, this is an option, without necessarily saying this is the right option or the incorrect option, but it's an option. And so in my mind, that was their job to provide us an option to see if it was in fact a viable one. Now, the rationale that I've heard today from the applicant, to me, is justification to continue keeping it on the second floor. I think the frustration is if you had provided that in writing earlier, we could have digested it together and been able to come in clearly and say, yes, this is an option. Yes, I may agree with it. I may not. And that's where the discussion and dialogue is. Now, given what I've heard tonight from the applicant, I do feel that because it is hidden, as we heard last time, because we've discussed the possible options of whether it can be placed on the first floor, and again, because in my mind, the 18 foot is allowable. And if we're looking at an eave line, that's pretty much can only be seen when you're magnifying it 500 feet, I believe, 500 times. That is not a justification in my mind to ask the applicant to redo their plans so that it does not fit the needs of their family. So I feel comfortable approving the application as is.
So, Commissioner Siak, are you about to make a motion?
Yes. Actually, I move to approve Architecture and Site Application S-14-050 located at 16347 Aztec Ridge Drive. Actually, may I borrow your findings? And I can make the findings that the proposed project is categorically exempt pursuant to Section 15303 of CEQA as adopted by the town, Exhibit 2. I can also make the required findings as required by the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines for granting an exception to the maximum allowed height of 18 feet. Again, this is just for the 262 that is non-visible from the viewing platform. And I can make the finding that other than the exception to the maximum allowed building height, the project complies with the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines. Make the required considerations as required by Section 29.20.150 of the Town Code. And one last comment I would like to make is that although it sounds like you're frustrated by what I think it seems like it's tedious, but it is our duty to make sure that the Hillside Development Standards are followed so that if there is a question in the future, the record clearly states that we did our due diligence. So I appreciate your patience, and with that, I make motion for approval.
Is there a second? Commissioner O'Donnell, seconds. Comments? Well, I will then make a comment, and that is that I was very appreciative of the homeowner stepping forward this evening because it gave us a rationale that made perfect sense because homes are built for families, and we understand that. Given that, however, we did go around this about 22 times in a way that could have been more succinctly put by the evidence that was placed into the record. So even, so I'm just saying this for the benefit of everyone here, that Commissioner Sayoc is correct. We need to have a full record, and so we've made that record tonight, but we probably could have done this in about 8 minutes had we had a more clear path to get to the final decision. So those are my comments to make, and they're just general comments, but in particular to this applicant, and I know this will be a beautiful home and the family will enjoy it for many years. So with that, do we have a vote? All in favor? Aye. It passes unanimously. Mr. Paulson, are there appeal rights?
There are appeal rights. Anyone who's not satisfied with the Planning Commission decision can appeal that decision to the Town Council. The forms are available in the clerk's office. There is a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
Thank you. I am now going to open new public hearings, and I'm going to call agenda item 2, which is 140 Hollycrest Drive. It's a tree appeal of a decision to deny a tree removal permit, T-14-138. And Ms. Mosley, yes, are you going to give us the report tonight?
I am. Good evening. Is this on? Okay, I just have to stand closer. Adjusting to the new setup here tonight. The Parks and Public Works Department received a tree removal permit application on July 21st of this year. The request was to remove a 35 and a 22-inch cedar trees located in the front yard at 140 Hollycrest Drive. The property owner requested the removal of the trees based on a concern of potential structural failure. The town arborist found the trees to be healthy and denied the permit. The decision regarding the larger tree was appealed by the property owner. The town's consulting arborist reviewed both trees further and provided several recommendations within her report. While the arborist recommends saving tree number 2, she finds the viability of tree number 1 questionable due to a condition called included bark, where 2 trunk-sized limbs are connected at the base of the tree. She provides pruning and cable support recommendations for the applicant if it is determined that the tree should be saved. Staff recommends the appeal be denied and that the applicant follow the maintenance recommendations provided by the consulting arborist. This concludes staff's report. We are here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mosley. I do have one question, and that is the arborist here? All right, thank you.
Both the town arborist and the consulting arborist are here.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Mosley? Commissioner O'Donnell?
To you, but on Exhibit 2, we quote the section of the town code for granting of approval of a tree removal application, and I noticed there are 9 possibilities. In the past, we've kind of talked about 2 possibilities, but one of which is the removal of the trees will not result in a density of trees or tree cover that is inconsistent with the neighborhood, and the other one, which is 8, removal of the protected trees will not result in a substantial adverse change in the site's aesthetic and biological significance, the topography of the land, and the effect of the removal of the tree on erosion, soil retention, or diversion. Did the staff take that into account in coming up with their recommendation?
Staff's role in providing this information to you is such that the town code as it currently stands is unclear whether how many of these findings you have to make in order to approve the removal of the tree. And so previously you could choose one, and that discussion is up to you tonight whether you can find those. But we did, the town arborist reviewed it and determined that the tree was healthy.
But the town arborist doesn't deal with the 9 possibilities, it only deals with whether the tree is healthy, right?
His role is to review whether or not he finds that it complies with this section of town code.
And did the staff consult with the town attorney as to whether it's conjunctive or disjunctive? All the reasons?
Commissioner O'Donnell, maybe we'll have the town attorney.
We're setting this up, and I want to know, we have a recommendation, and I'd like to know whether we can read these
the basis
disjunctively. So that can go to the town attorney. But before we start the hearing, I'd like to know what the rules are, because we're getting a recommendation based on a very narrow portion of these rules.
Yes, and I have asked the town attorney to respond, as well as Ms. Pravetti or Mr. Paulson. So, Ms. Mosley, you're not going to be excused yet. Okay, so just stand there. Okay, all right. Mr. Schultz.
Your question?
My question is, there are 9 considerations stated in the town code. And of course, the great question is whether they're all have to be taken together, or whether if you satisfy one of them, you can take the tree down. And my understanding is there's some confusion at the moment as to what the statute or ordinance means. So I would like your opinion. Is that the case? In which case, I guess we can make our own decision.
Certainly the code section that you referred to is vague and doesn't state whether it's conjunctive or disjunctive. It can't be read all as that all 9 have to be met, or I don't think you'd have a situation where you'd ever be able to make all 9. So there's no way you can. So what the point is now is for you to determine which one of those and can make the findings in those criteria to allow for the removal of the tree.
Thank you very much.
And if I may, Madam Chair, the first finding, which is the condition of the tree itself, is typically the one that we pay the most attention to, because the health of the tree itself is really one of the biggest factors. So when we have a situation where the tree is deemed as healthy, we typically don't then do all the rest of the analysis. So that's just for your consideration as well.
So do I understand you that then the analysis stops once the tree is declared healthy? Then you don't go to these factors?
Unless there's some other circumstance on the property. So obviously, if the tree, even if it's healthy, is causing damage, substantial damage, or is of some other imminent hazard not related to the tree's health, then of course we would consider the other factors. But in this particular case, health was...
But it's fair to say that these conditions are not weighted. There's nothing in here telling us that we should give more attention to one than another. Is that correct?
That is correct. They are findings for your consideration.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Telesford, did your question get answered? All right. Okay. So now I have, we have Ms. Mosley up here, but I also would like to hear from Ms. Ellis. So I'm not sure procedurally if we complete with staff and then we hear the speakers, then we hear Ms. Ellis. I'm not sure the sequence of that.
You might find more utility in terms of your communication with the town arborist and our consulting arborist after you've heard the public testimony, so that way you can gather all your questions together.
All right. Any other questions for Ms. Mosley? Seeing none, thank you very much. I'm going to open the public portion of the public hearing, and I have 2 cards in front of me, but I'm not sure which one is representing the applicant. So perhaps, is the applicant being, okay, why don't you step forward and introduce yourself, and then I'll know that you're speaking on behalf of the applicant.
My name's Brett Murray. I am the applicant. Maybe my card's hidden in the back there. I've lived at the property for the past 11 years, and this is my first commission meeting, so be gentle with me. So I'll tell you a little bit of background. If you're familiar, I'm assuming because of your roles, you're all familiar with Live Oak Manor. It's an old tract housing from the 1950s, 56, 57, and kind of cookie cutter houses that have had design drift over time. And they've started to distinguish themselves, but when we first were looking in the neighborhoods up there to move in and look for a place to go, this particular house actually appealed to us because of these 2 trees out front. They're large, they're unique, they obviously were going to provide passive cooling in the afternoon, and they just kind of make you feel like you're a little closer to the hillsides and all of that stuff that we'd like to be. Over time, we noticed some behaviors from the trees that maybe didn't make us particularly popular with the neighbors. In the fall, the trees release ridiculous amounts of pollen, and That's not something that the neighbors like when it's whipping off the trees. And also, as all of you know, we get really large windstorms out of the notch over the reservoir. So it was dropping pretty good sized branches at times too. These trees are kind of brittle in that way. So, we were always kind of starting to look at them suspect. And then a friend of mine, I grew up on the East Coast, came out to visit, and he is an arborist on the East Coast, and he noticed the included bark on one of the trees. And he also noticed the canopies were growing together in kind of an unhealthy way, and the branches are kind of curving out towards the outside of the canopy in an attempt to get light and all of that. So, he was questioning the health of these trees. He's not particularly familiar with them because I don't think they're in his region, but he kind of put them on our radar. And then a few years ago, we were dealing with liquid amber trees in the neighborhood, and the town arborist came out and helped us with that problem. At the same time, I wandered him over and said, how do you feel about these trees? And at the time, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he said something to the effect of, yeah, they're not particularly, they're not like glorious rare trees or anything like that. So if the time came to put in some sort of, for a permit to take them down, he'd help us figure out what to replace them with, and that's actually our intent. So when the time came, we decided to, we had a little extra money. We're doing some improvements around the house. We decided it's time to address the trees. I mean, this is thousands of dollars to take down one of these trees and do it the right way. And we were a little remiss when we were thinking about, like, okay, is this what we want to do? Because it will kind of change the profile of the house to some degree. And we put in for 2 permits. We wanted to take down both trees. After we got the denial and we brought out our own arborist, and you should have a report in there from Moki Smith, it became clear that actually one of the trees should do fine if you remove the other. We can get it trimmed, it'll grow healthy, the canopy will restore itself to kind of a natural formation, which is actually good for us because we didn't want to lose kind of the shelter that it gives to the house. And that's why when we appealed, we only wanted to appeal for the one. But the included bark on the what's called tree number 1 throughout all the reports is a pretty real thing. And if you look, every one of the arborists came with a recommendation of strapping the trees, which is kind of an admittance that, yes, there could be structural failure. Will it be this winter? Will it be 20 years from now? It's hard to say. But we kind of have the will. We know that it could potentially be a safety thing. If you look at how that tree is going to split, it could potentially impact 2 houses, one across the street, and in addition to our next door neighbor, who's an original owner who happens to have dementia. That's bad karma if that happens. So we decided that this was the time to try and take care of this, and that's why I'm here tonight. I would like to remove tree number 1 and would like to work with the town arborist to figure out what we would put in its place, and ideally 30 years from now when tree number 2 has had its day, we'll have a nice healthy tree next to it to take its place.
So if I could just refer you, before we start questions, I want to make sure what we're looking at in the arborist report. Ms. Mosley, do you mind putting that on the screen, just page 1, so we begin with the right information in front of us. She has actually identified tree 1 and 2, but I believe what you're talking about is one of the ones would be removed and number 2 would stay, based on this picture.
The entire left side would be removed.
Okay, so, all right, and keep number 2.
Correct.
All right. So, with that, Ms. Talisfor, I believe you had a question?
Thank you. So just so I understand, you really would not consider eliminating both trees?
We would.
You would?
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes from the unpopularity of the pollen storm we all endure, but also we wouldn't mind. They don't fit necessarily with the character of the neighborhood, and if we were going to put up replacements, we'd be in favor of that.
So, but if you decided somehow to keep number 2 because it's in this good shape, would you be, how would you be managing its growth and its, it's all of that?
At the time where we'd take down number 1, we'd do a serious pruning on number 2. It needs to be thinned out. It's overdue. We had it pruned. We had both trees pruned probably about 5 years ago, and we would do a pretty serious pruning on it then it would grow out on its own and restore itself, hopefully.
Thank you.
So I'm going to read to you from page 3 of the arborist report, just the last sentence on this, where she says, until these areas of the tree have been cleared and are completely visible, consider any evaluation of these trees incomplete and tentative recommendations, that they're based on the assumption, blah, blah, blah. So what I wonder is whether or not you've thought about having them cleared and cleaned and then a further evaluation.
I believe, I believe that part of the report is referring to the base of the trees. We have a lot of vines there.
Yes, I saw the ivy.
Yeah, and I believe that the ivy is covering it. So I think that they had a hard time assessing the true health of the root system of the tree with the ivy in place. And if we were trying to go for the removal based on health, that we would need to clear that so that they could look and see if it was truly unhealthy. We're going based on the assumption that these are healthy trees and that we're, in general, and that we're looking to remove tree number 1 because of the hazard that it poses more than anything else from the included bark, which is obvious and higher above the ground.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none. So you're going to have a chance to come back up for 3 minutes. But right now I would like to call Bruce Manson.
My name is Bruce Manson. I live at 133 Hollycrest Drive, almost directly across the street from Brett. You have on the agenda tonight this appeal, and I would encourage the Commission to find a way to work with the Murrays so that the Murrays can have this tree number 1 removed. As a resident of this street since 1980, I have seen several owners struggle with what to do with both these trees, actually, as each of them considered to be overhanging the street, messy and drippy, and aesthetically out of proportion with the house. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the health of the tree, but with the aesthetics with the house and the neighborhood. The first owner never had the money to do much of anything, and the second, I think, was preparing to do a clandestine tree removal in the back, but was caught and gave up on the tree removal business. So now it's left to Brett to work this story out. Certainly, I'm no arborist and can't comment on the safety of the tree, but I will point out that if you look at tree number 1 there, about 5 feet to the left of it on the curb in 1989, that curb was blown out by a very small fault that runs under Brett's house and runs down by Trader Joe's and out to Los Gatos Boulevard. That curb was blown out and landed on somebody's windshield. Similarly, on the next block over and on Los Gatos Boulevard, that same fault actually made the street shift enough to where some kind of large water pipe burst. And so that was a very exciting day for our neighborhood. But that runs right under tree number 1 there, in case you want to walk by during an earthquake. Now, I'm sure the city knows how to make these kind of removals happen. The Live Oak Manor Park, just yards away, had a number of healthy, mature trees removed just this past year. Many parking strip trees were removed this past year also, I think, as Brett already referred to. And I have to say that the air and light and views in the park and on the street have improved greatly as a result. Dramatically, I would say. There is no longer that overgrown look and feel of the neighborhood that there used to be. I was surprised when I read the section of the tree ordinance, that there was no element of urban design or urban landscape involved with those trees. So it's all about whether or not the tree is innocent until proven guilty. So my take is that if the city allows the Murrays to swap out trees or find some other similar solution, not only will a potential safety issue be avoided, but the neighborhood will be a better place as well. So once again, I encourage the city to find a way of working with the Murrays to work on this tree number 1. Thank you.
Sir, any questions? Seeing none? You're fine. Thank you. Mr. Briones?
Good evening. My name is Rich Briones. I live at 141 Hollycrest, which is directly across the street from trees 1 and 2. And I have to say that we've been in this community or in that particular house for 14 years. Since we moved in there, we've always hated those trees. Hated them because of the pollen, hated them because of the light that it blocks, and frankly, they just have never really fit in with the community. But it really didn't start to become more of an issue till about 4 or 5 years ago when we actually started to have structural integrity issues happen with the tree. There's been branches that have come down that have hit parked cars. You can see that that's a sidewalk that goes right through that. right under the canopy of those trees. When we moved in to the neighborhood, our kids were very young, and over the course of time, the neighborhood has changed. Some of the kids have grown up and have gone off to college, and now, we've got new families moving in, and once again, we've got the little kids going up and down the streets, and having, the large pine cones, the big branches that come down when during the winter storms, it's an issue. So as soon as we found out that there were definite integrity issues, potential integrity issues, at least with tree number 1, and the fact that it could actually, come down over toward my property, I could not be more supportive of being able to find some type of solution that we could work out to fit this tree ordinance into the real picture of what's happening in this community. Ultimately, I'd like to see both of them taken out and replaced with something that fits more in line with what has been replaced in that community. We've had the town arborists come in and help us with the parking strip and removing a lot of those liquid ambers that have created a lot of issues. In the neighborhood, at least our street looks much, much better with the new trees that were recommended and planted in conjunction with our town's arborists. So we think that there's a solution that we could come up with where we could replace both of these trees with something that would fit the neighborhood in a much better fashion and at the same time be safer. So.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. All right, so the applicant does have an opportunity to come back. If there's anything you would like to add, you're not required to come back, but if you've forgotten something.
I just wanted to come back, and obviously we've got some neighborhood support on this too, which I'm very grateful for. And I appreciated the dialogue that was going on earlier before I even got up, and I think Commissioner O'Donnell was asking questions along the line that my mind was going. There's kind of the letter of the policy and the law, and there's the spirit of it as well. And I don't undertake this trivially. I mean, this is a moment in time where I felt like I'm willing to put forth and spend my own money on this and do it for safety, do it for aesthetics, do it so people stop complaining. But at the same time, I also appreciate what you guys are here to do. You guys are here, I mean, I think Commissioner Saik was saying it on the last agenda item. I mean, you guys are here to do the due diligence, and you're here to keep the town beautiful and the schools, populated in the right way, and so that it's all a place that we want to live. So I'll respect whatever decision you come up with.
Thank you very much. I have no other speaker cards, so I'm going to close the public portion of the public hearing, and I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners if they have some comments, some additional questions, or they'd like to make a motion. Commissioner Talasfor?
I would like to make a motion, although, Commissioner O'Donnell, I don't want to hinder you if you wanted to as well, but Los Gatos and its trees, we take great pride in them. We take great pride in the fact that we like to protect them. But we also recognize a resident's right to enjoy where they live. And I have to tell you, when I visited your street and I stood across and saw the two trees, I couldn't help but ponder the fact that if I could, I would have taken them magically and put them in the forest where they belonged. They were so out of character. But aside from that, that's just the aesthetic appreciation, because the street is beautiful with all those liquid amber trees. I would tell you that, yes. But I think that it also, but let's get to the point of the matter, and that is to these findings we have to make. And the number one finding is the condition of the tree. And to that, since the town's consulting arborist reported the structural integrity of tree number 1 is questionable and in poor condition and should be probably removed because of its structural integrity and its included bark, I would agree that that tree should be removed. I also think that because of that poor condition of tree number 1, that when tree number 2 is left, it's going, to me anyway, to appear totally out of scale to the house and the neighborhood. So that's one of the reasons I asked, if you wanted to remove it, I would include that in the motion.
That's not an appeal, is it? I mean, I don't think that's before us, is that correct?
It's,
It was part of the denial,
it was part of
yes.
the denial.
But there's an appeal. I thought the appeal was on one tree. Maybe I misread that.
No, you did not misread it, and perhaps before Ms. Talasfor makes her formal motion, we are going to ask for some clarification. I do know the homeowner said that he was willing to save number 2.
Well, I agree with Ms. Talasfor, but the problem is, if in fact there's an appeal only on one tree, we can't deal with 2 trees. Unless I've been wrong before, so I'll look for guidance from our attorney.
Okay, I was just looking at,
Let's find out.
You're absolutely right. There's only been the appeal for the one tree, so that's all in front of you, but you certainly can let the applicant know that you'd entertain that and see the reasoning behind number 2 and support the removal of that tree. The problem with doing that from the dais right now, there might be a neighbor that wants to preserve 2 and would be here with the appeal, though, and making a different argument. And that's
So as I understand,
Raise it.
right, I just want to make sure, so if the applicant wanted to remove number 2, then they would just apply for another tree permit, and the staff has our thoughts on it, assuming that the other commissioners are going to
So
have similar thoughts.
why don't
So
I-
how about make the formal?
Right, why don't
Okay,
I just
all
jump right to
thank
the
you.
chase here, okay? And I would move to grant the appeal of a decision to deny a tree removal permit on property zoned R18, APN 424-13-026 for 140 Holly Crest Drive, and the tree removal permit is T14-138. I can make the findings as is required by CEQA and also as required for standards of review for a tree removal application, and that would be Section 2910 0990 of the Town Code for granting approval of a tree removal application, specifically citing number 1, number 3, and number 8. I don't have to read those, do I? Okay, thank you.
Correct.
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. It's passed unanimously. Mr. Paulson, what are the next steps?
There are appeal rights. Anyone who's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal that decision to the Town Council. The forms are available in the clerk's office. There is a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
Thank you very much. I would like to call item number 3. However, I have no cards on the item. So if someone's going to speak, they need to fill out the card. So item number 3 is an appeal of a decision to deny a tree removal permit on property at 16611 Madrone Avenue. And it's tree permit application T14154. And Ms. Mosley, you're our tree person tonight.
I seem to be for the near future.
All right.
Thank you. The Parks and Public Works Department received a tree removal permit application on August 18th of this year. The request was to remove 2 30-inch diameter cedar trees that are located at the rear of the property at 16611 Madrone Avenue. The request was based on a concern of potential structural and limb failure due to the proximity of several retaining walls. In addition, the property owner believes the trees have reached the end of their viable life, as represented by the sparse canopy of the trees. The town arborist found the trees to be healthy and denied the permit. The property owner filed an appeal on September 11th of this year. In addition to the 2 cedars, the applicant is now also requesting to remove a 30-inch Monterey pine. The town's consulting arborist reviewed the 3 trees and found all 3 trees to be healthy, but did note that the structural integrity of both cedars is questionable, considering the proximity of the cuts done to install the landscape retaining walls several years ago. The arborist recommended that if the decision was made to retain the trees, that a qualified arborist should be contacted for short and long-term management of the trees, and a risk assessment from a qualified tree risk assessor should be completed annually. Staff recommends the appeal be denied and that the property owner continue to work with a qualified arborist in caring for and assessing the trees for any future changes in health or stability. This completes staff's report. We are here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mosley. I actually do have a question for you. in your report, you indicated that the trees are healthy. And when I read Ms. Ellis's report, I read that the condition of them is fair. And so can you connect that with me as you're analyzing this, how you would be analyzing healthy versus fair, if there is a versus?
The consulting arborist could speak to how she particularly categorizes them, but the report did not conclude that the trees were unhealthy or sick or on the verge of or on the decline.
So what I understand you're saying then is that fair, good, medium doesn't translate into healthy or not. They're either healthy or they're not when you make your analysis.
Oftentimes in the consulting arborist report, she lumps in as well the structural and as well as the viability for retention. So sometimes that fair standpoint comes from a combination of those elements.
Okay, thank you. It's just I just wondered when you sit down and you look at an application and then you have the arborist report, how you track the recommendations. So that's all. Thank you, Ms. Mosley. Any other questions?
We apparently have the arborist here.
Yes, correct.
Will we hear her before or after? We didn't hear her last time.
Correct. And that's one of the questions I have. So, Ms. Pravetti.
If it's the desire of the commission, once Ms. Mosley is completed, you may address your questions either to the consulting arborist or to staff.
Well, to the chair, it would be helpful. The question you asked would best be answered, I think, by the arborist. And I, for one, would like to have that information before we hear from the applicant.
I agree, Commissioner O'Donnell. Thank you, Ms. Mosley.
Thank you.
And so I would like to call then Ms. Ellis as a staff consultant.
Good evening, Commissioners. Should I explain my ratings?
Yes, maybe you could do that. That would be helpful. Don't have to go into great detail, but since we seem to have a number of these coming forward, and this one in particular tonight, I think it would be helpful for us to have you give us your translation.
How about we start with tree number 1? That's the deodar that, if you're looking at most of the pictures, is on the right side.
You know, Ms. Ellis, I'm having trouble hearing you. I don't know if anyone else is. Maybe you want to...
How about now?
It's better.
Good? Okay. All right. So I think you've seen my reports before, and what I try and do is I look at the vigor of the tree, which is kind of like the vitality of the tree, and I also look at the structure of the tree. And in this case, for the 2 deodars, I found the tree that is on the left, if you're looking at the house from the street, to be in a little has a little bit better vigor than the deodar on the right. And so I gave the deodar on the left a vigor rating of 60, which is basically fair. It's kind of like a C on an A to F grading scale. It's not good, it's not great, but it's not terrible either. So this is not a tree with a lot of vitality, but doesn't appear to be dying. The deodar on the right, not quite in that condition. I would rate it a little bit less, so I gave it a 50. That's kind of fair poor. I think that tree probably suffered more grading around it, and that might be the reason. So in my opinion, all 3 of these trees, none of them are great trees. The health is, it's either fair or fair poor, structure kind of the same. None of them appear to be dying. None of them appear to be in the process of dropping large branches or falling over from the base, but it could happen in the future. And they're large trees close to the house, grade cut made much closer to the trunk than advisable, and if the trees remain, we kind of have to hope for the best.
Commissioner O'Donnell, did that clear
Yeah,
your
can I ask
question?
her-
Yes, please, of course.
I've had some unfortunate experience with Monterey pines. What's the typical life of a Monterey pine in time?
Well, that depends, partly on where it is. If it's a native tree out by the coast where they grew naturally before pine pitch canker disease hit, I think they can be 150 years old. But when you get to an area like a residential site where there are a lot of constraints, it's usually much less.
The reason I ask is I had two huge trees which happened to die just as I moved in, and I had to take them out. Very wide base. They were about 35 years old. Is that inconsistent with what your experience is in Los Gatos, or is there?
You know, it depends. I see probably more Monterey pines here now that are not in good condition than in good condition, although I do find some trees in good condition, and sometimes they're fairly large, and they probably, either through irrigation or reaching groundwater, they are doing well because they have higher moisture. Oftentimes in urban areas like this, Monterey pines start to have problems, mostly because they're not receiving adequate water, generally around the age of 15 or 20 years. But it varies a lot with the tree and the site. So you can't really make a general recommendation for them all.
Thank you.
Commissioner Telesfor, I think you had your hand up.
Oh, I did. I did. Thank you. So, in addressing our findings, number 3 is the removal of the trees will not result in a density of trees or tree cover that is inconsistent with the neighborhood. Would you say that applies here?
To tell you the truth, I didn't really look at that specifically, so I don't think I can give a good answer.
Okay, even from just, oh, you're talking about what's around it. I was saying if you looked at the canopy that they provide now, it looks a little sparse to me.
It depends on where you look at them. If you look at, there's another picture in my report, I believe, I hope. I thought I put a picture of them from the front of the house. Did I not?
I don't see one.
I did not. I do remember taking pictures of the trees from the front of the house. You can see the trees from the street in front of the house. They're not particularly large because they're fairly set back from the street, but you can see them.
Okay.
Will they be missed a lot? I don't know. There's a lot of large trees on this particular property, even in the front yard, so perhaps not.
Okay.
I haven't really looked at the other neighboring properties, though.
All right, thank you. And so this would be an opportunity for a more appropriate tree to be put in the backyard, would you say?
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Badami?
You refer to cedars number 1 and 2 as gray area trees. Would you also refer to the Monterey pine as also being a gray area tree?
It could be. I think it's a little less because I haven't seen obvious damage done to it like with the cedars.
Thank you.
But it's a tree. I can't find a compelling reason to remove it, but does it bother me a little bit, this huge tree on a slope above the house? Yeah, I'm not crazy about it.
So yes or no gray area on that one?
Sure.
Based on that?
Gray area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. So now I'm going to open the public portion of the public hearing and call Mr. Young, who's going to be, you're representing the homeowners, is that correct? Thank you.
Yes, my name is Michael Young. I'm the owner of Urban Tree Management, and I'm representing Mr. Anderson. He's, I think, in Mexico on work. So I visited the site, assessed the trees, and you have my report in front of you. And I think the key elements here, we've already, I think you know as much as you need to really know, but the key elements, I think, with these 3 particular trees are, one, the excavation for that wall there should have never happened where it happened. I don't know how that was approved or if it was approved, but it was too close. Two, I think the other key element is deodar cedars are not a tree that come back from this kind of lack of vitality. It's not a tree that turns around well. So my experience of 25 years is I've seen a lot of deodar cedars in stress, and I would say that these trees are in stress and that they head one direction from here, and that direction is downhill. They're not magnificent redwoods or magnificent oaks that I think merit a big rally of input and labor that have a chance to come back. So I think those two key elements for the deodars, and if you remember the two pictures from the previous applicant, you saw how dense and full those trees were, and then you look at these and obviously quite thin. So in my opinion, they're on their way down and not coming back. And then the Monterey pine, Monterey pines of this age, you know, I was hearing the conversation about when do Monterey pines die, and we've been watching Monterey pines die for our whole careers, basically, but especially in the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years. My experience is 30, 35, you know, they're about done. 50, you know, a 50-year-old Monterey pine is a rare thing. So what's the runway for this particular Monterey pine? Not very big. It is on a slope. The slope is quite steep below the tree. So what are the merits of retaining this tree? I just don't see it. And the homeowner has some big, beautiful redwoods in the front of the property, and he enjoys those trees, plans on keeping them. And he also mentioned to me that he's open to planting some new trees in the backyard. So I think it's a good time to swap out some, you know, thinning, ailing trees and put in something that hopefully will last for the next 50, 100 years.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Commissioner O'Donnell?
One of the things we look at, as you've heard, is whether the removal of the tree will or will not result in a density of trees or tree cover that is inconsistent with the neighborhood. When I looked at the property from the front, there are a lot of trees, and in fact, this house has some magnificent trees in the front. It's difficult almost to see the trees in the back. Are you able to make any kind of assessment as to whether the removal of one or more of these trees will have, in your judgment, have a significant impact on the density of the trees in the neighborhood?
You know, obviously removal of trees is removal of trees, so you will lose some canopy in the neighborhood. Are we losing it now, or are we losing it 3 to 5 years from now? I think we're losing that canopy no matter what, is the bottom line. And so why not plant something that will last another 50 and 100 years as opposed to nursing these into the grave, and every storm that comes through, he's going to have a sleepless night. So.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
You can be seated. All right, I have no other cards, so I'll close the public portion of the public hearing, and I'll look to my fellow commissioners for comments or a motion.
I was just going to say, I think those trees would be better replaced, because whether, as we know, we don't have to find that they're in imminent danger of falling, which is the number one thing in the list. But it's obvious they're not in great condition. And secondly, they really, from the backyard standpoint, they don't add beauty, I don't think, to the backyard. And it would appear that if we were to condition this upon replacement trees, whether that's 2 or 3, I don't know, everybody would be better off. So I guess my tendency is to think that this does satisfy several of the what I believe to be alternative requirements of the code section. So I throw that out to hear any of the comments of my fellow commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Actually, I'll speak to this as well, and I would agree with your comments. The more philosophical question I had as I read through the report was the landscaping and the landscaping design, and the fact that that what looks like a smaller retaining wall has actually cost the homeowner in our town 2 trees. And it makes me feel like we should really look at these landscape applications more closely or the staff should, because this was clearly done incorrectly. I mean, both our consultant and their consultant agreed to that. So that's just it's just a more philosophical comment than anything else. So I would agree with you, Commissioner O'Donnell, and if other commissioners agree, then perhaps we could have one of you make a motion. All right.
I'll make a motion that the appeal be granted, that the project is categorically exempt under California Environmental Quality Action Act, Section 15304, and that the basis for the tree removal would be our own code section, which is 2910-0990, in that the removal, number 3, I believe the measures that apply would be number 3 and number 8. So I would incorporate those 2 as the basis for the motion.
Do I have a second? Commissioner Talisfor?
I will go ahead and second that for all the reasons stated. I don't think we need to talk about it anymore.
All right. I'm sorry, Commissioner Prevetti. Yeah, Commissioner Prevetti, you're not.
Thank you. Promotion.
A reduction in pay.
Right.
I just want to clarify the number of trees that you're proposing.
I'm proposing all 3.
So similar to the last one, the original tree removal permit was actually for 2, so we'll just require them to submit a tree removal permit with the direction from the commission that.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
So that the applicant understands. So then it's for 2, and then there would have to be a new
tree removal
permit for tree number 3.
Correct.
So thank you, Commissioner. I'm sorry.
I forgot to add, the removal should be conditioned upon submittal of a replacement tree plan. And it doesn't have to be 1-for-1, although if 2 trees are taken out as opposed to 3, it would probably be better to have at least 2 trees being put in. Those trees, of course, would be subject to the approval of the town. And so the removal would be conditioned upon the prompt replacement of the trees.
And I think that is part of the code, is it not?
That is part of the code. The tree replacement, there's actually a condition in the report to plant replacement trees based on the canopy size within 60 days.
And the seconder would agree to.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Sayak, did you have a comment?
Actually, it was along those lines. I will be supporting the motion, but I think it might be helpful, as mentioned, it is condition number 3, and that it has to be planted within 60 days. It would be helpful if it says the number and size of new trees shall be determined. It might be helpful in the future just to indicate that up front so we know exactly how much tree coverage would be replaced with.
All right, no further comments. All in favor of the motion? Aye, passes unanimously. Mr. Paulson, are there appeal rights?
There are appeal rights. Anyone who's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal the decision to the Town Council. Forms are available in the clerk's office. Appeal must be filed within 10 days, and there is a fee for filing the appeal.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to call item number 4, which is an application for a conditional use permit U14010, architecture and site application S14075, requesting approval to construct additions and a new second story to a non-conforming residential use for existing units on property located at 206 Bella Vista Avenue. And by a show of hands, how many commissioners have visited the property? All of us have. Thank you. Ms. Savage, you're going to give us the report.
Thank you, Chair. The use of the 4 residential units on this property is considered a non-conforming use. Modification to this non-conforming use, including the proposed project to add to unit number 1, requires a conditional use permit. The applicant is requesting approval to demolish the existing carport, construct a 3-car garage in place of the carport, construct a first-story addition to unit number 1, and construct a new second story for unit number 1. The project would be compatible with the neighborhood in terms of square footage and floor area ratio. To obtain advice regarding the proposed architectural style and details and neighborhood compatibility, staff requested the town's architectural consultant to review the project. The consultant made recommendations to modify the roof form and the materials. Staff believes the recommendations regarding modifying the roof form would create a project that is more in keeping with the town of Los Gatos. However, the proposed roof material is a green building method and staff supports its use. The applicant submitted a response to the architectural consultant report and his recommendations, providing justification for the applicant's proposed design. The justification explains why the roof form was designed the way it was in the current manner, including accommodating rooftop equipment to hide it from view and create architectural interest for the sloped roof on the right side elevation. The proposed project would allow the remodel and addition to one of the 4 existing units on the property. This concludes staff presentation, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. Any questions for staff? None at this time. I know you'll stand by. So now I'm going to open the public portion of the public hearing, and I'm going to call Mr. Young. Mr. Young, you will have 5 minutes to address us, and then also a response if one is desired on your part.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Samuel Young, and I'm the owner of 206 Bella Vista Avenue. I spent much of my youth here in Los Gatos, where I attended both Fisher and Los Gatos High in the 80s and 90s. With all the fond memories of this town, I was ecstatic to return to this great town when I purchased this property a little over a year ago. The property is unique that there's a small single-family home in the front and 3 little cottages in the rear. If you've been out to the site, which you all had indicated that you had, you'll notice that the property has fallen into disrepair due to neglect by the prior property owners. Despite all the challenges with this property, it is my hope to tastefully update the home and add approximately 448 square feet to the existing small 914 square foot home. Also, the garages will be replacing the existing footprint of the 3-car carport. I've worked with the planning staff in the neighborhood and came up with a plan presented before you. The style of the home is a contemporary rustic farmhouse. It retains its existing board and batten siding. If you notice, the current roof structure has a haphazard add-on look to it. This will be transformed to a roof structure that is elegant, clean, simple, and adds to the neighborhood. Planned renderings of the building and architectural styles and samples were presented to the surrounding neighbors, and as I understand it, they are in support of the project. It is a design that is sensitive to the neighborhood. Developers would typically look at this property and consider it a tear down. But I see it as a diamond in the rough and a home for my 2 boys, which are waiting patiently. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I especially want to thank Jennifer Savage for her help in getting this project before you for your consideration. It is my hope that each of you will approve this project as it is envisioned. I have any questions, feel free to ask.
I'm also, before we ask questions, I do want to make a comment on the 2 children who were here because they have been extremely well behaved. I've been observing them, so you could be very proud of their behavior this evening. So I'm glad you mentioned it because I was going to mention it to you. All right, so now we're going to start with Commissioner Bondami, and then who else had their hand up? Commissioner O'Donnell. Thank you.
So when you purchased the home last year, were units number 2 and 3 already replaced with the green metal roofs?
No, it wasn't. It was in disrepair. The insurance, I had issues with the insurance company insuring the property because the roof needed immediate replacement. So I went ahead and made that change. It was a roof material that was just a mixture of metal, wood shake, composite. So it was a mixture of everything. If you notice, the property is kind of like, again, kind of thrown together with different materials.
But when you purchased the property, you had intentions of renovating it and adding on.
That's correct.
So the fact that you replaced the roof on 2 and 3, you kind of took a gamble that the front of the unit could be carried on with the green metal roof.
It is my hope, yes. So I went and went down to the town. And I did discuss it with the planner that was at the counter at the time, as well as the building department, to get approval for that roof replacement.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I would appreciate it if you would kind of take us through the town architect, Mr. Cannon, made comments and you responded to those comments. Could you tell me, essentially, did you agree to make any changes requested by Mr. Cannon?
Regarding the first point, which we can probably go over, regarding the changing to the roof form to the main structure, or the primary portion of the structure, makes it infeasible for me to even access the rear portion of the property. So let me put this up.
If you want to take the mic out of it, you can walk up and point things out to us.
So here we're looking at the north elevation, or the left side. If you notice that this is the primary roof structure, that is all one pitch. By changing the pitch, what would end up happening is, we're talking about this side here. This pitch would change, and then this pitch would stay the same. Otherwise, it would make it infeasible for the construction of this bedroom here. That's right over the garage. Furthermore, if you even lower it slightly, then what would happen is that it would make the second story over the garage infeasible to access, because it requires a certain height requirement for the stairs to get up to the second story. If you also notice that the second story is kind of built in the roof form, which the town of Los Gatos encourages, so we don't have that huge 2-story home look. And so if it's about 8 foot, maybe 7.5 to 8 foot, right at the highest point of that second story. So if you lower it any further, it would not allow you to access that second story area. The changes, if they want to actually make the roof pitch such that it actually peaks, again, it will increase the massing of the roof itself. So again, it makes it, unless we have a larger larger roof, then it would be feasible, but it would have to go higher. Regarding the second point, which was the metal roof material. I think if you have any questions about justification of that metal roof material, then I can answer that or expand on that further. Regarding the gradually sloping roof that you see right over the garage on the So on the right side elevation, the gradually sloping roof, that gradually sloping roof that you see there is hidden from view from the street. So it can't be viewed, and it can't be viewed from a neighboring property because the primary unit comes out far enough such that it actually hides that entire area. I also have a picture to give you some perspective if you'd like to take a look at that at some point in time. But the gradually sloping roof is more something that's a little more of an artistic flair. You can, some people like, a good friend put it to me this way, some people like wearing the hat straight, some people like tilting it off to the side. But, it may not be for everybody, so that's why it's kind of hidden from view, kind of masked by the primary roof, and also, again, masked on the side as well. And the neighboring property cannot view it because there is a fence and lattice, and she has bushes growing all over the lattice as well. So it usually blocks most of the view to my house, but recently we had a section of the fence replaced, so the bushes are actually growing back in as well. I did talk with my neighbor regarding that, the metal roof as well as the gradual slope, and they had raised no objections.
If I could ask you a question about Mr. Cannon's recommendation that you put your HVAC equipment on the ground rather than on the roof, and what your response is to that?
That's something I can do. I can put it on the ground, but the roof form will still need to stay the same unless I go higher.
So the roof form is not to hide the equipment?
It serves a dual purpose. It not only reduces the mass to cut it off where it is, as well as hide the equipment. And I also have an example to kind of give you some kind of a picture of what it'll look like amongst, like, say, in downtown Los Gatos, where there's a bunch of flat roofs and peaked roofs, and this one in particular in Los Gatos, right next to the Lexington House, has roofs formed similar to this. So as you can see, that's on the corner of Elm and North Santa Cruz. If you're familiar with, if you're familiar with Lexington House restaurant, and then here you go. Unfortunately, that's a little dark the way it shows up there, but you can see all the HVAC equipment is well hidden. The only real difference is that, you know, there's roof is smaller in mass because this is a commercial building. Mine's a residential, so it's much smaller.
It's also a tile roof?
Yeah, that's also a tile roof. But the form and shape is very similar, just to give you kind of an idea of what it can look like.
All right.
And in regards to the color, I also want to mention that you know, if you want to blend into the other roofs, I know architectural consultant or staff may have concerns about the green color. I would like the Planning Commission to consider that, you know, there's a lot of green in that area. You can either blend in with the other roofs which are gray and brown, or if you can blend into the green, which is obviously not showing up here very clearly, but there's a lot of green in this area. And I would like to rather blend into the environment than the foliage rather than other roof per se.
So the color of your roof is green?
Yes, it's green. And I brought a sample as well. You feel free to take a look at it.
Yes, Ms. Savage, if you could pass that around, that would be great. Commissioner Bondami?
So you say there's a lot of green in the area. Have you seen any green roofs in the area?
No.
Thank you.
Except my roof. Just to clarify, the rear units are green. I understand if you don't necessarily want to approve something that is not green, but you know, I believe it is the town's desire to kind of keep a consistent material and color throughout, and it is my desire as well.
Go ahead.
Yes. So this is the green that's on the roofs that you have presently, correct?
That's correct. And I can put up a picture just to get.
Yeah, if you have a picture of that, I don't remember this green. I remember a lighter green. Yeah. It came off looking a little lighter, I think, because of the sun hitting it. So.
And I can pass this picture around because it really doesn't show up well here.
Are there any other questions of the applicant? Seeing none. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, Mr. O'Donnell does.
I just have one question. Is it your intention to rent the other units?
That's correct.
All right.
my kids got to go to college somehow.
Other than the new roof that you put on those, have they been fixed up inside?
Just one of the units had some minor renovations, but the other units have not. I will go through that over time.
Are there tenants in it at the moment?
There is, yes.
There are, or there is?
There is, yes.
Just one, then?
There are 5 total.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
2 married couples and a single.
So we would say it's fully occupied in the back?
That's correct.
All right.
And again, I plan on occupying the front unit.
Correct. All right, seeing no other questions for the applicant, Mr. Young, you can have a seat, and I'm going to close the public portion of the public hearing, and I'm going to look to my fellow commissioners for questions, comments, a motion. Ms. Savage, anything else you want to add?
No additions.
You just look like maybe you wanted to add something. All right.
Well,
Commissioner O'Donnell, you look like you're ready to make a motion.
I will try and see how far we go. We have 2 applications. One is a conditional use permit, and one is the architectural and site applications. So I would make a motion to approve the conditional use permit, and I'll expand on that in a moment, and also to approve the architecture and site application as identified. The conditional use permit, I would find that the proposed use is desirable to the public convenience and welfare, will not impair the integrity and character of the zone, will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or general welfare, and is in harmony with the various elements or objectives of the general plan and the purpose of the town code. So those, I think, are the required findings for the use permit. As far as architectural and site considerations, we are to consider relevant matters which are specified on page 6 of the staff report, items 1 through 9, and the discussion, which is also set forth after that, I would adopt. And I believe that the action we're taking is not subject to CEQA for the reasons stated. So I think, though, that would hopefully that's complete as to both items.
Commissioner O'Donnell, I'm happy to second. However, what I would like to add to it, if you're amenable to this, is that we include the conditions for approval that are in Exhibit 2 and 3.
Absolutely.
And with that, are there any further discussion from my fellow commissioners? Commissioner Talasfor?
Right. Could I ask, because of the metal roof, I'm all for being current with roof styles, et cetera, but it's that the house on Bella Vista, although it's not a historically designated area, that's a very historic street. And what's really stands out to me is the consistency of the roofs. And because this roof in the front house is different than the ones in the back, that hasn't bothered me at all. So my question is, would it be something that we need to think about recommending that perhaps one, we either, as the staff had said, choose a darker metal roof that would blend more aesthetically with the streetscape, which is what we see, or even and consider a shingled metal roof, which they also can produce today. So I have some comments on that, because I really, and the evaluation from the town architect I thought was really relevant.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I don't have a problem with the roof material or the structure of that material. I could see how perhaps one might make the color a bit darker. The other units are the green, so having the front unit green, again, is consistent with the balance of the units. But one could make that green somewhat darker, I suppose, if that would satisfy you. And it would not be totally inconsistent with the past units. I'm assuming for the moment that such a green is available. And that would be, we would ask the staff to look at that. But if such a green is not available, then I would be happy to go with the material as it is proposed, because it is consistent with the subsequent, I'm having trouble with my language, the units in the back. And I found that green not to be troublesome at all. But if it were somewhat darker, it might satisfy you, and I think that's a reasonable request that you have. So if that would satisfy you, we could seek to amend the motion as I suggested. So I'd like to see whether that would satisfy Commissioner Talasfore.
Commissioner, if I could just ask a question of staff. So that would be adding an additional condition of approval, would it not? But it's a conditional of approval. So if it were available, tell me, let's walk through this procedurally.
So it is certainly within the purview of the Planning Commission to add or modify the conditions that are proposed for you this evening. And in these types of circumstances where we don't have all the information that is being discussed, you can always add to the satisfaction of the Community Development Director or her designee. So that's an option if that would help.
All right. So I agree with Commissioner O'Donnell. This is just my personally, that I did not find the color offensive. So, however, if we can add that condition, and then we can.
Yeah, in the amendment, which I'm going to propose in a moment, and I'm directing this to you, Chair, I think the green was fine. And all I'm saying is if we soften it somewhat, so it wouldn't be a big change, and that's presupposing that such material is available, and it may or may not be. So I would amend the motion I previously made by saying, as an additional condition, because there are a number of conditions, that the applicant provides staff with an alternative green shade of the material that would be less reflective, therefore softer, if it is available, and to the satisfaction of the Community Development Director or her designee. So that would be the amendment to the motion previously made.
So, Mr. Paulson, you have something you want to add here? Before I'm going to second it, and I'm also going to add something that you and I left out, so I'll do that. But why don't we hear from Mr. Paulson, then Commissioner Badami?
Staff just wanted some clarification. In the current conditions of approval in Exhibit 3, condition number 9 is the roof form modification requirements, which currently require the applicant to conform to what the consulting architect asked for. I just wanted confirmation as to whether or not that was the intent of the commission, or whether you were comfortable with the proposed application as proposed by the applicant currently.
My understanding is the proposal is that he essentially will match the roof that he has already put on the back units. So to the extent that varies from the recommendation of our architect, I'm adopting his roof with this one caveat we had. And as I understand it, Commissioner Badami wants to speak to that.
Well, and when you say his roof, you mean you're adopting the applicant's roof?
Yes.
Correct. All right. As proposed by the applicant. Commissioner Badami.
I would have trouble making the finding for a green roof, the color itself, even if it's an alternative green. I understand, trying to blend it in with the back units, but the back units aren't visible to the streetscape, and that's what we're concerned about, is blending in with the neighborhood and keeping the character of the neighborhood. And I just don't see green on Bella Vista.
All right.
That's what makes a horse race.
Okay. So I am seconding the motion of Commissioner O'Donnell, as he revised it. Plus, I would like to add that the required finding, excuse me, Commissioner Paulson, how many commissioners do we have tonight? We only have 5 commissioners. Mr. Paulson.
I'm sorry. I think staff understood that we were comfortable with the applicant's roof material. The changes were, as you went through with the applicant at the dais, of the having the bigger peak and the other modifications to the shed dormer roof, which was suggested by the consulting architect. You want those things incorporated, or you're comfortable with the applicant's design as proposed for the roof form itself, not the roof material?
My motion, well, obviously was inartful, meant to approve his application as opposed to Mr. Cannon's suggestions.
Great. Thank you.
So a friendly amendment to the motion is the required finding as required by Section 4B of the redevelopment plan for the Central Los Gatos redevelopment project, that it meets the use set forth in the town's general plan as outlined in Exhibit 2. And I believe that that covers then the technicality that we needed to do, Mr.
I would agree
O'Donnell.
with that.
All right. So now further comments. Seeing, yes, Commissioner Sayak.
Okay. In general, with regard to the design, I don't. I agree with the applicant's desire and his desires and his reasoning for not necessarily agreeing with the architectural consultant. In my mind, is justified and sound. The issue, it appears now, is with regard to the color, and I too did not find it offensive going there. But this is also an area where I feel that I would defer to the architectural consultant because it didn't stand out to me, yet I could also see the reasoning to blend in color-wise with the surrounding neighborhood. So with regard to the color, I do see that there is a reason that would be, in my opinion, blending into a brown or a similar color to the existing neighborhood would be justifiable.
So, Commissioner Sayak, if I could ask you then, the request that the applicant meet with staff with a darker green roof color, would that satisfy you? Because that is a condition that we put in.
What I'd like to question process-wise is, would that question be something you would ask if that's in conjunction with what the architectural consultant made, or that's just something that you would make given the discussion you heard tonight?
What we've heard is that the commission would like to remove condition number 9 pertaining to the roof form and essentially replace it with a condition requesting that the applicant explore the availability of a darker green metal roof material if such a product exists. If it doesn't, then we would be essentially back to the sample that we saw this evening, unless you want to provide additional guidance for a second choice.
I was just going to say, if it appears that 3 or more of my fellow commissioners would not be comfortable with green, I would be glad, if that's the case, I would be glad to amend the motion just to satisfy them, because it doesn't bother me in the least, but color is, unfortunately, somewhat of a personal thing. And Commissioner Sayak has indicated that following the town's architect recommendation, there's probably no good reason not to do that. So if I understand her correctly, then she would feel more comfortable were we to amend the motion appropriately in that regard.
That is correct.
Well, then let me ask this question, Commissioner Talasford. I am wondering if, because I'd like to see this project go forward, and I am wondering, because we're meeting again in 2 weeks, if the applicant can be, we have a motion, but we haven't had a vote yet, so we have a motion which we can withdraw. Can we have this applicant bring in an alternative color of roof so that we can vote on this I don't know that it would be unanimous, but in any case, we would satisfy the questions of other members of the staff. I mean, other members of the commission. Goodness. Okay, now, Commissioner Talisfar, I know you've been waiting to say something.
Thank you. I really appreciate the comments I've heard and Commissioner O'Donnell's addition of a dark green roof. But actually, I think I would be more comfortable, and I think this could move forward, if the applicant were to go with the suggestion of the consulting architect and also the staff in matching the front roof's color to what is in the immediate neighborhood, which is really what is in our design guidelines, is that we have to fit in, and it wouldn't be such an interruption and an abrupt interruption from the streetscape. The house is very close to the street, so I would think that we could move this ahead with Commissioner O'Donnell's other.
I don't think we'd need a continuance then.
I don't think so.
If we were to follow the recommendation
Right.
as to color.
Yes.
Because when you read the architect's consideration, he says consider using composition shingle roofing similar to other homes. We're not saying that. We're saying use a color similar to other homes, and that color would be to the satisfaction, again, of the director, but within that purview. So apparently it wouldn't be green anymore.
Right.
So I would be happy if the seconder would agree to amend the motion appropriately on that coloring.
I agree. And Commissioner Sack, would that satisfy you?
Actually, that's a perfect solution. Thank you.
All right, good. All right, so do we consider the amendment, do we consider the motion so amended, and I'm seconding it?
I'm in favor of that.
Okay, all right. And staff is clear what the motion is, and the applicant is clear what the motion is. All right. Are we clear? All right, okay. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. It's passed unanimously. Mr. Paulson?
There are appeal rights. Anyone who's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal the decision to the Town Council. Forms are available in the clerk's office. There's a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
All right, thank you. And just as a word of general explanation as to the applicant did ask to speak again, but once we close the public portion of the public hearing, then the applicant cannot address the commission again. It's a communication then between commissioners and staffs, just so that you understand the procedure. So with that, let's see, do we have a report because items 5 and 6 have been continued, and do we have a report from Ms. Pravetti?
Yes, a very brief one for you this evening. Last week, the Town Council considered the appeal of the Jersey Mike Sub Sandwich Shop. He appealed the traffic fee condition in his CUP, and the Town Council believed that there was new information that had not been available to the Planning Commission when you heard the item, and so they did grant the appeal and reduced the fee to the amount that the applicant would have paid prior to the recent increase in the traffic impact fee. The second item that is related to land use was our planned development report out from the Planning Commission, and the and the council decided to continue that item, not to a date certain, but we'll let you know when that is. And then third, I just want to continue to announce that we are accepting application to all of our boards and commissions here with the town. Applications are available on our website and are due December 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pravetti. Mr. Paulson, do you have anything to add?
Not this evening.
And fellow commissioners, nothing to add? Well, then I'm going to close again with a congratulations to Commissioner Sayak. And we've appreciated your service very much, and I've personally appreciated your mentoring. So thank you. All right, meeting adjourned.